I'm Andrea Coleman, 30 years old, a coder making six figures in Rochester, New York. My mom only ever sees my sister, her dazzling singing star, and never me. For the past 2 years, I've been paying their rent $2,000 a month, while she brags nonstop about her favorite stage dreams. Last Sunday, at a family dinner, she went too far. Andrea, you're not even 1/10 of your sister, she scoffed, swirling her wine. My blood boiled. I shoved my chair back, stood tall, and fired back. Great. Then I'll only pay 1/10 of the rent. My dad choked on his drink, eyes wide. My sister's face went pale as a sheet. That moment cracked our family wide open, revealing secrets I never expected. Behind the smiles and the boasting, there were darker truths they never wanted me to uncover. Before we dive into my story, tell me what time it is, where you're watching, and which city you're in. I really want to know how far my story has reached. Growing up in Rochester, New York, our house revolved around my mother's dreams. My mother, Diane, ran a boutique, pouring her heart into fashion and glitz. She saw herself in my sister Bethany, a singer a few years older, always chasing the spotlight. Bethany's voice filled our living room, her rehearsals pulling Mom's attention like a magnet. I was the kid tinkering with computers, coding my first app by 16, but Mom barely glanced my way. "Your sister's got a show tonight," she'd say, rushing us to some dimly lit bar. I'd sit in the back watching Bethany belt out lyrics while Mom clapped like it was Carnegie Hall. Dad, my father Gary, tried to balance things. He'd slip into my room after school, nodding at my computer screen. "That's impressive," he'd say, pointing to my code, but his words felt like whispers against Mom's cheers for Bethany. Once I won a regional coding contest, and Dad brought home pizza to celebrate. Mom didn't show she was at Bethany's open mic. I ate alone, staring at my trophy, feeling like an afterthought. It wasn't just favoritism, it was a race I was set up to lose. Bethany never seemed to notice. She'd prance around soaking up Mom's praise, practicing scales while I debugged programs in my room. I tried talking to her once, asking why she got all the attention. "It's just how Mom is." She shrugged, flipping her hair like my hurt didn't register. I started spending more time at school, joining tech clubs, building apps that got me scholarships. But every time I came home, Mom's eyes were on Bethany, planning her next audition. Dad would pat my shoulder, mumbling about fairness, but he never pushed back hard enough. I'd retreat to my keyboard, coding late into the night, trying to outrun the sting of being overlooked. It wasn't always like that. When I was younger, Mom taught me to sew her hands, guiding mine through fabric. But as Bethany's singing took off, those moments faded. By high school, I was invisible unless I messed up. Once I forgot to lock the back door and Mom snapped, "Why can't you be responsible like your sister?" Bethany smirked, saying nothing. I wanted to scream that I was building software, not forgetting keys, but I swallowed it. Dad caught my eye, offering a weak smile, but he didn't speak up. That silence became normal, him trying to keep peace, me feeling pushed out. The competition grew sharper as we got older. Bethany's gigs got bigger, local theaters, then regional contests. Mom would drop everything to drive her, leaving me to figure out my own rides to tech fairs. I'd hear them laughing in the car, planning Bethany's future while I biked home alone. I started keeping score in my head every time Mom bragged about Bethany's voice, every time she ignored my projects. It wasn't about jealousy, I wanted to be seen. But Mom had her star, and I wasn't it. Dad's quiet support couldn't fill that gap. I'd lie awake wondering why my wins never mattered as much. By the time I left for college, I'd built a wall. I focused on coding, landing internships, proving I didn't need Mom's approval. But the hurt lingered like a bruise that wouldn't fade. Bethany kept singing, chasing fame while I chased stability. I thought distance would dull the ache, but every call home reminded me Mom's world spun around Bethany. Dad would ask about my classes, but Mom cut in, gushing about Bethany's latest show. I'd hang up, staring at my dorm wall, feeling like I was still that kid in the back of the bar, unseen. Years ago, my mother's boutique crumbled under her lavish spending. Mom had a knack for excess designer handbags stacked in her closet weekend trips to Paris for fashion inspiration. She'd drop thousands on a single purse claiming it was an investment for her store. By the time I was in college, her business was bleeding, racking up $75,000 in debt. She never told Dad spinning tales of thriving sales to keep him clueless. Bethany, always by her side, knew every detail. They'd jet off to New York for shopping sprees, buying dresses and jewelry, while Mom's ledger drowned in red ink. I was 28, fresh off a big promotion, when Mom called me late one night. Her voice was sharp, urgent. "We're about to lose the apartment," she said, no preamble. "You need to step up." I froze, staring at my laptop, my latest code still open. She laid out the numbers: $2,000 a month for rent unpaid for weeks. I didn't ask why she hadn't told Dad or why Bethany wasn't pitching in. I just wired the money to their landlord the next day, thinking it was a one-time fix. But the calls kept coming month after month. Mom framed it as my duty, like I owed them for existing. Bethany never mentioned it, but I'd catch her wearing new earrings, smirking as Mom bragged about her latest gig. For 2 years, I sent $2,000 every month, $48,000 total, straight from my savings. My tech job paid well, but the payments ate into my plans: buying a house, saving for retirement. I'd lie awake calculating what I'd sacrificed, my stomach twisting. I told myself I was protecting Dad, keeping our family intact. He'd sit at dinner talking about his old accounting job, oblivious to the hole Mom had dug. Bethany would nod along, changing the subject whenever bills came up. I wanted to scream to shake them both, but I stayed silent, hoping they'd see my effort. The weight grew heavier each month. I'd check my bank account, watching it shrink, while Mom posted photos of her and Bethany at fancy brunches. Once I overheard her on the phone, laughing about a new leather jacket while I was skipping coffee runs to make ends meet. I tried talking to Bethany, thinking she'd understand. "You're doing fine," she said, brushing me off her nails, freshly manicured. Mom was worse. She'd call to check in, but it was always about the next payment. "You're the responsible one," she'd say, her tone implying it wasn't a compliment. I'd hang up feeling like a machine, not a daughter. I started cutting corners in my own life. No vacations, no new laptop, even though mine was lagging. My coworkers noticed, asking why I looked drained. I'd shrug, blaming deadlines, but the truth was the secret I carried. I couldn't tell Dad, he'd be crushed, thinking he'd failed us. So I kept paying month after month, telling myself it was temporary. But Mom's demands never stopped, and Bethany's silence screamed louder than words. I'd stare at my budget numbers blurring, wondering why I was the only one holding us together. The resentment built slow and steady, like a storm I didn't see coming. That day we gathered to celebrate Bethany's latest acting gig. Mom had pulled out all the stops, hosting in their apartment, her face glowing with pride. She raised a glass, her voice loud. "To my daughter, the star who's lighting up the stage." Bethany beamed, soaking it up, her earrings glinting as she nodded. I sat across the table, poking at my food, my stomach already tight. Dad smiled weakly, trying to keep up with Mom's enthusiasm, but his eyes darted to me like he sensed the storm brewing. Mom didn't stop. She launched into a story about Bethany's audition, how directors called her a natural, how she was destined for Broadway. "She's always had that spark," Mom said, leaning forward, her wine glass tilting. I gripped my fork, feeling the familiar sting, but I stayed quiet, hoping she'd move on. She didn't. Her gaze landed on me, sharp and cold. "Andrea, why can't you be more like Bethany? You're not even 1/10 of your sister." The words hit like a slap, echoing in my head. Dad froze his fork halfway to his mouth. Bethany smirked, sipping her drink like she'd won something. I couldn't breathe. 2 years of carrying their secrets, $48,000 of my money, and I was still nothing to her. My chair scraped the floor as I pushed it back, standing tall. "Great," I said, my voice steady despite the fire in my chest. "Then I'll only pay 1/10 of the rent." Mom's glass stopped midair, her eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" she snapped. I didn't flinch. 2 years, Mom. $2,000 a month. I've been paying your rent. All of it. Dad choked on his drink, coughing hard, his face red. Andrea, what? He stammered, looking from me to Mom. Bethany's smirk vanished, her hands gripping the table, her face pale as milk. You're lying, she hissed, but her voice shook. Mom's jaw tightened, her fingers white around her glass. That's enough, she said, her tone icy like I'd betrayed them. The air turned thick, every sound amplified the clink of Dad's fork, Bethany's shallow breaths. I stared at Mom, waiting for her to admit it, to say something real. She didn't. Her silence was louder than her insults. I kept going, my voice rising. $48,000, Mom. My savings gone so you and Bethany could keep this charade. Dad's eyes widened, his mouth open, no words coming out. Bethany shrank in her chair, her confidence crumbling. You never asked me to, I said, turning to her. But you knew, didn't you? She looked away, her lips pressed tight. No defense. Mom slammed her glass down, wine sloshing. How dare you bring this up now? She spat. This is Bethany's night. That was it. The room spun, but I felt steady, like a weight had lifted. No, I said, stepping back. This is my night. I grabbed my coat from the chair, my hands shaking but sure. Dad reached out, his voice soft. Andrea, wait. I shook my head. I'm done waiting. I walked to the door, their eyes burning into my back. The click of the latch felt final, like I'd broken a chain. As I stepped into the hall, my chest ached, half from the hurt, half from the freedom of finally speaking. I didn't look back. The night air stung as I stormed out of my parents' apartment. I got home, dropped my keys on the counter, and sank onto my couch, the silence deafening. My phone buzzed twice. Dad's message popped up first. Andrea, are you okay? Please call me. His worry felt real, but it couldn't erase the dinner's sting. Then Bethany's text, you ruined everything. Why can't you just keep quiet? Her words twisted the knife, blaming me for exposing their lies. I stared at the screen, my chest tight, torn between anger and hurt. I'd carried their secrets for 2 years, and this was my reward. I couldn't sleep that night, replaying the dinner in my head. Mom's cold stare, Bethany's smirk, Dad's shock, they looped like a bad movie. I felt raw, like every ignored moment from my childhood had crashed into that one insult. By morning, I was drained, my eyes heavy from staring at the ceiling. I dragged myself to work, hoping coding would distract me, but my focus was shot. My coworker, Leslie Morgan, noticed. She pulled me aside at lunch, her voice gentle. You look like you're carrying the world, she said, handing me a coffee. I hesitated, then spilled everything, the dinner, Mom's words, the rent payments. Leslie listened, her eyes steady, not interrupting. You don't deserve that, Leslie said when I finished. You're not their ATM. You need to set boundaries, Andrea. Her words hit hard, like a light cutting through fog. She told me about her own family, how she'd learned to say no to her brother's endless demands. You can't pour from an empty cup, she said, squeezing my hand. I nodded, feeling a spark of resolve. Leslie's support wasn't pity, it was a push to stand up for myself. I left lunch lighter, her advice echoing boundaries, not burdens. That week, I searched for therapists online, scrolling through profiles, until I found Dr. Michael Bennett, a counselor in Rochester. I booked a session, nervous but desperate for clarity. In his office, I sat stiffly recounting the dinner, my voice breaking as I described Mom's insult. Dr. Bennett leaned forward, his tone calm but direct. Why do you think you owe them your worth? He asked. I froze, the question cutting deeper than I expected. He guided me through my resentment, years of being overlooked, the weight of those rent payments. Your value isn't tied to what you give them, he said. It's in who you are. Each session peeled back layers. Dr. Bennett had me list my strengths, my coding skills, my discipline, my loyalty. I'd never thought of myself that way, always measuring against Bethany's spotlight. He pushed me to see the pattern, Mom's favoritism, Bethany's silence, my need to fix everything. You can't control their choices, he said, but you can control yours. I started journaling, writing down moments I'd felt proud building an app that won a tech award mentoring new coders at work. For the first time, I saw my own light not dimmed by Mom's shadow. Leslie checked in a few days later, texting to meet at a coffee shop. Over lattes, she asked how I was holding up. I admitted the hurt still lingered, but therapy was helping. She grinned proud and told me to keep going. You're stronger than you think, she said, her voice firm. I clung to that, a lifeline in the chaos. By the end of the week, I felt different, not healed, but grounded. Dr. Bennett's words stuck. My worth wasn't in their approval. I wasn't ready to face Mom or Bethany, but I knew I'd never let them define me again. 3 days after the dinner, my phone buzzed with Bethany's name. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering, knowing this wouldn't be an apology. I answered, bracing myself. Her voice cut through, sharp and accusing. You're supposed to help family. Andrea, she said, no hello, no warmth. Paying the rent is your responsibility. You can't just walk away. I gripped the phone, my jaw tight. She spoke like I owed her, like my savings were theirs to claim. Bethany, I said, keeping my tone even, I've paid enough. 2 years, $48,000. I'm done. She laughed, cold and bitter. You think you're some hero? You're selfish, always have been. Her words stung, but I didn't waver. Selfish? I shot back. I kept you and Mom afloat while you paraded around like a star. She went silent, then hissed, You'll regret this. The call ended with a click, her threat hanging in the air. I sat on my couch, heart pounding, her voice echoing Mom's insults from the dinner. I'd expected pushback, but not this Bethany acting like I'd betrayed her for refusing to be their bank. Hours later, my phone lit up with notifications. Bethany had posted on Facebook, some family members stab you in the back and call it love. The post didn't name me, but the comments did. Friends I hadn't seen in years, cousins I barely knew, piling on with likes and, who's this about? My stomach twisted. I scrolled through, seeing my name tagged in replies. Andrea's always been stuck up. She thinks she's better than everyone. My hands shook as I read each comment, chipping at my reputation. People who didn't know the truth about the rent, the lies, were buying her story. I wanted to fire back, to post my side, but I stopped. Reacting would only fuel her narrative. Instead, I took screenshots, saving every word, every name. Bethany's post wasn't just spite, it was a calculated move to paint me as the villain. I felt exposed, like my life was on display for strangers to judge. My inbox filled with messages from mutual friends, some curious, some accusing. One asked, "Why'd you ditch your family?" I didn't reply. The hurt cut deep, but it also lit a fire. I wasn't going to let her rewrite my story. The next morning, I called a lawyer, a woman I'd found through a colleague's recommendation. I explained everything: the rent payments, Mom's debt, Bethany's call, the Facebook post. Can they come after me for more? I asked, my voice steady but anxious. My lawyer, calm and direct, assured me I had no legal obligation. You've done more than enough, she said, reviewing my bank records. We can send a cease and desist if they push further. She suggested documenting everything: texts, posts, bank transfers, to protect my finances. I felt a surge of relief, like I was finally taking control. I spent the afternoon organizing evidence, pulling up 2 years of payment records. Each transaction was a reminder of the burden I'd carried, but also proof of my strength. I blocked Bethany's number, her words no longer welcome in my life. Mom hadn't reached out, her silence louder than any argument. Dad sent another text asking to talk, but I wasn't ready. I needed space, not more pleas, to keep the peace. My lawyer's advice echoed Leslie's from days earlier: set boundaries, protect yourself. I wasn't just cutting ties. I was building a wall to guard my future. By evening, I sat at my desk, staring at the screenshots of Bethany's post. Friends had started unfollowing me, their silence a quiet betrayal, but I felt clearer, stronger. Bethany's attack hadn't broken me, it had shown me who I could rely on. I wasn't the villain she wanted people to see. I was done carrying their weight, done letting their lies define me. The lawyer's number stayed in my phone, a reminder I had options. I wasn't running anymore. I was standing firm. A week later, I walked into my parents' apartment ready for answers. The air felt heavy, the living room cluttered with Mom's designer bags, a reminder of her reckless spending. I sat across from Mom and Dad, my hands steady despite the knot in my stomach. "We need to talk about the rent," I said, my voice firm. Mom's eyes narrowed, her lips pursed like she'd been waiting for this fight. Dad shifted in his chair, his fingers tapping nervously on the armrest. Mom didn't hesitate. "Yes, I spent too much," she admitted, her tone sharp, not apologetic. "The trips to Milan, the handbags, they were for the boutique's image." She leaned forward, pointing at me. "But you could have helped more, Andrea. You sat there with your fancy job hoarding your money while we struggled." Her words twisted reality like I hadn't drained my savings for them. I stared, stunned, as she painted herself the victim. $75,000 in debt, I said, keeping my voice even. "I paid $48,000 for your rent." "How is that hoarding?" Dad's eyes widened, his face pale. "Diane, you said the business was fine," he said, his voice low, almost pleading. Mom waved him off, her bracelets jangling. "Don't start, Gary." Andrea should have stepped up sooner. I felt a sting, not just from her words, but from Dad's silence after. He looked at me, his eyes soft, but he didn't speak up. I waited, hoping he'd say something, anything to defend me. Instead, he rubbed his temples, siding with Mom by staying quiet. The room felt smaller, their denial pressing against me. I pushed back, my voice rising. "I paid your rent for 2 years, Mom. Every month, without a thank you. And you're blaming me?" She crossed her arms, her face hard. "Your family. That's what family does." Her words echoed Bethany's call, the same entitled tone. I shook my head, anger mixing with clarity. "No," I said. "Family doesn't use each other. I'm done paying for your mistakes." Mom's jaw dropped, her eyes flashing. "You can't do that," she snapped. "We'll lose everything." Dad finally spoke, his voice weak. "Andrea, let's not make this harder." His words cut deeper than Mom's. I'd wanted him to see me, to stand up for me, but he chose her side like always. I stood my chair, scraping the floor. "I'm not making it harder," I said, looking at them both. "I'm stopping it. No more money. You figure it out." Mom's face reddened, but she didn't speak. Dad stared at the floor, his hands clasped, avoiding my gaze. I grabbed my bag, my heart pounding but lighter. "I've carried this family long enough," I said, my voice steady. "I'm done." I walked to the door, their silence following me. As I stepped into the hall, the weight of years, Mom's blame, Dad's passivity, fell away. I wasn't their fix anymore. For the first time, I felt free, like I'd reclaimed something they'd taken. The door closed behind me, and I didn't look back. 6 months later, I stood in my apartment, staring at Rochester's skyline. My phone no longer buzzed with Mom's demands or Bethany's accusations. I'd blocked their numbers, cutting the cord after years of carrying their weight. The silence was strange at first, like a missing limb, but it grew into peace. I'd stopped checking for their messages, stopped waiting for apologies that never came. My world felt smaller, quieter, but mine. Mom had sold their apartment, the one I'd kept afloat for 2 years. A coworker mentioned seeing her at a local department store, ringing up purchases for $15 an hour. Her designer bags were gone, replaced by a name tag and a forced smile. I didn't feel pity, just a dull ache for what could have been. Bethany's acting dreams had fizzled out. She was working retail too, selling clothes instead of wearing them on stage. Her social media, once full of audition selfies, now showed clearance racks and discount codes. I didn't gloat. Their fall wasn't my victory. It was just the consequence of their choices. Dad had moved into a small studio, taking a part-time job at a hardware store. I heard he was managing living simply, no longer tied to Mom's chaos. I hadn't spoken to him since our last meeting, but I kept his number unblocked, a small thread left intact. Sometimes I'd see his name in my contacts and feel a pang, not anger, just sadness for the father who couldn't choose me. I hoped he was okay, but I wasn't ready to reach out. Not yet. My days found a new rhythm. Work became my anchor, coding late into the night, building apps that solved real problems. I led a project that streamlined a client's database, earning praise from my team. The pride I felt wasn't tied to anyone's approval but my own. Outside work, I leaned into my friendship with Leslie. We'd grab dinner at a diner near the office, laughing over burgers and fries, talking about everything but my family. Leslie didn't pry or counsel. She was just there, a steady presence who reminded me life could be light. One evening, she teased me about my terrible taste in sci-fi movies, and I laughed until my sides hurt. It felt like breathing again. The lessons came slowly, carved from the pain. I learned that boundaries aren't walls. They're doors you choose to open or close. Saying no to Mom and Bethany wasn't selfish. It was survival. I'd spent years trying to earn their love, thinking my worth lay in what I gave them. Now I saw the truth. My value was in my choices, my work, my heart. I stopped excusing their toxic patterns. Mom's entitlement, Bethany's manipulation. Letting go didn't mean I stopped caring. It meant I started caring for myself. I still carried scars, but they were fading. Therapy had taught me to see them as proof of strength, not failure. Every line of code I wrote, every laugh with Leslie, every quiet night in my apartment built a life that was mine. I wasn't running from my past anymore. I was standing tall in my present. To anyone watching this, thank you for hearing my story. It's not just mine. It's a reminder to choose yourself, to set boundaries, to walk away from what dims your light. Share your thoughts below, hit that like button and subscribe if this resonated. Your stories matter too. Let's keep this conversation going.